maybe we might even see some Mega Rayquaza with Delta Stream coming up. Yeah.
Well, some variety is always good, as we would actually look at the usage statistics, a very long spiral this time, reflecting the number of players we have today.
The top 3 still has not changed. The top 1 is still Kangaskhan, followed closely by Xerneas.
It's actually changed, as in the maybe the order has not changed. But I feel like I'm not being heard.
No, it's just the other mic.
Right, so Kangaskhan actually was number 2 previously, and what's shocking to me that Xerneas has actually climbed above Groudon.
Maybe people are recognizing other forms of weather. We can see, okay, after the big 3 that we see Talonflame, Smeargle, not surprisingly.
Smeargle clocking it at number 5, just like in Battle Sport.
Yeah, there's been some talk about how Smeargle has been over-centralizing the meta, causing a lot of, how would you say, a lot of centralizing on beating Smeargle. But I guess it's a Pokemon that people have to find a way to play around.
When something ranks in the top 5 in usage, you can't really call it a gimmick that's not worth preparing your team around. It's there, it's a major threat, it's a top 5 threat. You really have no excuse to dedicate at least 1 slot. Perhaps not even dedicate, but putting enough ways to beat Smeargle on your team.
And well, I guess Smeargle does add a degree of control in a very aggressive meta. We saw in the previous game, the Groudon went for the Protect and the Smeargle started controlling the game using Dark Void. So,
but then again, the element of luck is there. If any of the Dark Voids had missed, without the Follow Me support granted by Smeargle, the Groudon would have been taking hits.
Yeah, I guess that's also why Smeargle is such a good utility mon. You can literally give it any move you want. Fake out even.
That being said, the Smeargles we're going to see are probably running along the same variants, Fake Out, Follow Me, Dark Void. Actually the last slot should be Spiky Shield. Or maybe even transform over either Fake Out or Follow Me,
I don't know.
Depending on what the team needs.
If the meta if people predict a lot of taunts, I can see Magic Code going on Smeargle as well. Okay, moving on from Smeargle, we see next is Kyogre.
Actually, the Talonflame usage is actually pretty high, surprising even me, because Talonflame is usually derided as a Pokemon that's no skill, and it's always been derided for its lack of bulk. And a lack of bulk in this metagame with hyper-offensive legendaries, it's a strange metagame for Talonflame to be making a return.
Well, I do think back in VGC15 it was a very good attacker, but in this meta, its utility is really shining through. You get Quick Guard, you get the Tailwind for speed control as well, and Priority Brave Bird to pick off any sash or to break sashes is quite handy.
And again, we did see what happened in the first game. Talonflame just pretty much just did its job. He got his Tailwind off, fired off a Brave Bird, went down, and the rest of the team carried the rest of the game.
Yeah, you could say going down was part of his strategy. He wanted to feint the Talonflame so he could bring in something to affect the game more, to change his board position.
But Kyogre has definitely fallen quite a bit from where it used to be. Kyogre used to be, I think, sitting in the top 4 in Singapore usage. But, well, a lot less Kyogres than Groudon this time around, as expected.
Alright, next we see Ferrothorn. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly?
Ferrothorn is not surprising. It's in the top 10 in Battle Space usage, though even those usage statistics are based on maybe 4 days of play. Yeah, but Ferrothorn beats Kyogre and beats Xerneas most importantly with the Gyro Ball after Geomancies.
Alright, then after the Ferrothorn we see the last weather trio, Rayquaza.
Pretty much where we expected it to be. It's under both of the weather starters, but pretty close to Kyogre actually. And a surprising number considering how dominant Kangaskhan is. The players are opting for the Rayquaza, which requires a Mega Evolution slot on your team.
Well, we have seen Rayquaza still packs quite a punch without the Mega Evolution, but yeah, you do have to sacrifice the Mega slot, which could be quite detrimental.
And Rayquaza, being a weather user of its own, sometimes discourages you to bring your own primals in the same game because you can interfere with your own weather.
Exactly, as we've seen in the previous game, the Groudon and the Kyogre interfering. And next, after that, we see Cresselia, surprisingly. I guess with such a speed-orientated meta game, Cresselia is one of the more premium Pokemon to use Trick Room, to set up Trick Room, and it has pretty decent bulk as well.
Cresselia, of course, is most known in this metagame so far for being able to skill swap your own weather user to control the weather. In fact, I've heard a lot of talk, like, well, even within our own circle of players, for how they are trying to speed creep each other's Cresselias to see who gets the slowest skill swap off to control the weather between two opposing weather users.
Yeah, and the Trick Room to counter the Tailwind. And it does have a pretty good set of utility moves, like you mentioned earlier, the skill swap, but also the helping hand.
But of course, offensive presence, well, it's a Cresselia. It's even worse than it was last year, so players have to be prepared for the possibility that Cresselia will be left alone on the field.
No, I guess the only thing he could really threaten is maybe the Rayquaza if he carries Ice Beam. But yeah, the offensive presence is lacking from the Cresselia. Next up, after Cresselia, we see the Crobat, which I think it has fallen, right?
Crobat, no, I think it's sitting in pretty much the same area as it was. But less than we expected, because Crobat is just a very solid lead in this current metagame.
I actually expected it to be higher because Singapore seems to like using Crobat, especially with the offensive punch you get from using Super Fang. You immediately whittle down the opponent down to half health and can easily take it out with any move you want.
Yeah, we expected more Crobats, especially to counter the number of Smeargles we see. But less Crobats than Smeargles, so that Void might be running a bit more rampant than people hope today.
Now, I don't know, maybe there are not many taunters. A lot of people have opted to switch out their mental herbs for Lumberries to counter the Dark Void. And Crobat, also another advantage is the inner focus, of course. The number one being Kangaskhan, you can't fake out the Crobat. It is going to get off
the Tailwind or Super
Tailwind off. And it even has a quick guard if it wants to block the fake out on its own partner. Yeah.
A very strong utility mon, but not as high in usage as we would have predicted. Moving on, we do see a very large number of Salamence, presumably the Mega Salamence. And I suppose it's not as big a surprise as we would think, because I believe it has become known as the Battle Sport Special. The Kangaskhan, Xerneas, Groudon, and with Salamence in that core, surprisingly enough. Smeargle to add to that, of course.
I don't really see it being very useful. I mean, if you look at the top three, though it can just... I guess utility is good because it can intimidate the Kangaskhan and the Groudon.
And it doesn't take damage from most of Groudon's coverage moves.
Yeah, but it's still quite vulnerable to the Xerneas. So I think that's something that players play around. Yeah, and next up we follow it up with another Intimidator.
Actually, we do see back-to-back the Intimidators. So, as expected to counter a metagame where Kangaskhan is number one and Groudon is more often than not a physical variant.
Yeah, actually there's something in common here. Both of them take almost nothing. They don't take any damage from Groudon's Precipitate Blades, which I think is one of the factors that players
Landorus does not enjoy taking any sort of fire attack in the sun. Even after they Intimidate, a Fire Punch, it's probably a 2-hit KO on Landorus.
Right then, indeed. Next up we have Gengar, which we saw in the previous match.
And it should be noted that the usage from here starts to tail off pretty hard. 18 Landorus all the way down to 12 Gengars. And Gengar presumably mostly with the Mega variant to be paired with a Prankster user as we see further down the list, the Liepard and the Whimsicott.
Alright then.
And we saw it in round 1, which Gengar's ability to threaten anything on the field.
I think the utility of it being able to trap Mons is also useful, although I think it's not as useful as the previous season.
I suppose its usefulness is not as useful as it used to be, but what it does is it puts a lot of psychological pressure on your opponent. Your opponent knows that after you Mega Evolve, he has no chance to switch out. So not only is he forced to deal with the possibility of a Fake Tears boosted attack or one of his Pokemon taking it out, he has to deal with the possibility that he might be trapped with unwanted Pokemon against Mega Gengar, and this is his last turn to switch, giving the Mega Gengar player a very strong turn 1.
Not to mention the fact that if the Groudon stays in, if the opponent has a Kyogre, what if the Kyogre comes in and changes the weather? He cannot reset the weather.
Yes. Well, and of course, if you protect in front of Gengar, his Prankster partner will be more than happy to encore that for you.
Right then, following Gengar, we see Togekiss, which is not really very surprising. Once again, takes nothing from Groudon's Precipitate Blades. Does have the Follow Me support, and I believe can also use Tailwind, although it's not a very fast user.
Well, it's a Tailwind user and a Follow Me user combined in one, which is a very useful combination. Though Togekiss bout not as handy as it used to be, because you probably have to dedicate one side of Togekiss. You probably have to dedicate Togekiss to one side of the spectrum. And, well, if you dedicate all the physical bout, you are not going to enjoy taking things like Gengar Sludge Bomb and even Kyogre Ice Beam, all the water attacks from both Groudon and Kyogre.
Next up, we have Liepard, one of the
I believe we can discuss Liepard and Whimsicott together. The dual Prankster users who very much enjoy being paired with
both
Gengar.
have Encore. Whimsy does have Tailwind.
Both have Fake Tears and the Encore. Yeah. A very strong combination.
Liepard does provide the fake out pressure though, and actually has offensive presence with the Foul Play.
Yes, Foul Play in the metagame with Kangaskhan, Groudon, even Special Groudon doesn't enjoy taking the Foul Play, going off its 180 base attack.
Yeah, well, Whimsicott, not much to say. We saw the Helping Hand earlier. What other notable moves does Whimsicott have?
It does get Tailwind, which Liepard lacks. And it does get, for the more niche picks who are more interested in controlling their own weather, it does get the Worry Seed to remove your opponent's weather user's ability. mostly useful for Kyogre players trying to remove Sun.
Well, I guess if you're afraid of a Smeargle's Dark Void, you can worry see your own partner as well to give it Insomnia.
And it is priority, so you will be able to beat Smeargle's Dark Void. Though the thing is, you would expect these Prankster users to have Taunt, to handle the Smeargle, to handle the Xerneas when he wants to Geomancy, but I think now that we've played the metagame quite a bit, it seems that the Prankster users seem to be dropping Taunt quite a lot for the other utility moves.
Yeah, there are just too many things that they can do, and well, Lumberry seems to be able to solve that. I mean, if they get the Tailwind off, it doesn't matter if the Smeargle put the partner to sleep, I guess, if you can KO the Smeargle next turn.
And I think this also has a bit of a knock-on effect with, I think, Metal Herb slowly dropping in usage as time goes by because not many things are carrying Taunt.
Indeed. I guess previously Crobat used to run Taunt, but I believe now some of them run Brave Bird instead because the lack of actual attack that can finish off the opponent is quite jarring. You know, it's not very good for their team strategy.
Going down the list, we have a very interesting option in Greninja. Greninja, well, we know what Greninja does. It's fast. It offers strong offensive pressure with its step moves, but it should be noted that in this generation, Greninja is pretty much forced to hold the Life Orb because it has no way to KO Xerneas with Gunk Shot without a Life Orb boost, which kind of limits its own options because when you play Greninja, you kind of want to sash it because it's so frail. With Extreme Speed from Rayquaza, with Brave Bird from Talonflame, being forced to carry the Life Orb to get your important KOs can be quite detrimental.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Greninja and its utility moves, I right off the bat, I can remember it's only Mad Block, and with all the priority running around, it's not really going to do much.
And the thing is, you also have dedicated Greninja. Like, we're used to seeing mixed Greninja doing work in previous metagames, but currently, Greninja requires so much investment in one stat to perhaps, let's say, to get a KO on Xerneas with Gunk Shot. By the time you invest all that attack to get that KO, it doesn't have enough special attack to guarantee the KO on a Delta Stream Mega Rayquaza with Ice Beam.
Even with the Life Orb.
And by carrying Life Orb, you also open yourself up to all sorts of damage coming from priority because you have to run either Hasty Nature, which you probably don't want to, with all the extreme speeds and fake outs. So you probably want to go Naive, which means that even after Gunk Shot, I don't think you want to take a Moonblast from the Xerneas.
Yeah, it should be a one-hit KO, yeah. Alright then,
Maw, right? So going down, we see the Mega Mawile, presumably Mega Mawile because Maw in its regular form, not quite what you want to be bringing into a game at this level. Interesting choice. Very importantly, it gets the KO on Xerneas, though Mawile being Mawile doesn't really enjoy taking a +2 Moonblast either.
Yeah, and matchup against Groudon is not really good. It does have the Intimidate to try to nerf Groudon's attack, but it does not enjoy taking a ground step from.
Pretty much just there to handle the Xerneas, I would say. There's very little reason to use Mawile in this metagame other than to pretty guarantee 1-hit KO on the Xerneas.
Yeah, and I guess with other people running faster priorities, Sucker Punch is a bit lackluster this metagame.
Though again, if you have your own Xerneas, there's always the situation where you can take advantage of the Fairy Aura with your own Play Rough.
Considering if Play Rough hits. If Play
Of
Rough
course.
hits.
Among Us all the way down at 6. Pretty much fallen from glory, but at the same time,
I'm surprised it's even in.
it's still the most notable Rage Powder user. And Spore does well, incapacitate things like Xerneas after they boost, giving you a bit of breathing space.
I mean, Ferrothorn is one of the best counters to Among Us, and it is quite widely used. So, Ferrothorn being there and being Among Us being so low on the tier doesn't surprise me a lot. I'm just surprised that it's even being used at all by players.
Well, as I said before, I mean, the players have discovered that Among Us being a grass type, having Step Grass Knot, is a very good way to check the Kyogre, who is so heavy, and even does decent damage to Groudon as well. Though I suppose sitting in front of Groudon isn't what Among Us wants to be
especially
doing.
if it's in the sun.
We are. So, and we have 5 Ho-Ohs as well. Ho-Oh, well, I kind of expected Ho-Oh to maybe rise a bit in popularity. There's a lot of hype over the internet over the past week, maybe past 2 weeks, over John Hu's Rayquaza Ho-Oh team. And especially since Jurong, who pretty much pointed out that he used Ho-Oh strictly as a Xerneas counter.
The fire type resisting the fairy stat.
And of course, Secret Fire being able to burn Kangaskhan and do a lot of damage to Xerneas. But down to 5, well, especially since the other factor being that Ho actually won the Malaysian PC just I think last week or the week before. So I would expect maybe some of the Malaysian players would have brought it, but well, down at 5, I suppose, kind of sitting where we expect it to be.
And I guess
a niche pick for. But then again, it's not that much of a niche pick. given how strong it is against Xerneas. And to an extent, Groudon, since Groudon can't hurt you. Though, well, your bulk kind of... You sacrifice your bulk whenever you use Brave Bird, so sometimes players don't really want to make that trade.
I guess that some Ho-Hos do run rules so they can recover the HP. I think one of the main weaknesses of Ho-Ho, the rock type, is pretty much...
non-existent.
Yeah, it's non-existent. I mean, I guess only the Landorus will be able to carry it.
And even Kyogre, the thing about... But the weird thing about Ho-Oh is that Ho-Ohs tend to EV themselves to survive the Origin Pulse from opposing Kyogre. But the thing is, your main way of damaging Kyogre is Brave Bird. So after you survive the Origin Pulse and you go for a Brave Bird, you're going down to the recoil.
Well, I would say if you can control the weather on your own side, then Ho-Ho will be a pretty good pick. If you can deny the weather with, let's say if you pair with your own Groudon and the Kyogre is forced to Ice Beam, then Ho-Ho will have a field day.
If you pair with your own, or if you pair with your own Groudon, I suppose. But John Ho paired it with Rayquaza, who doesn't have any way to stop Kyogre from spamming water moves. But he made it work, so who are we to say?
Yeah, hopefully we'll see more of that in the upcoming matches.